In progress.
Welcome to OLC 4.0, Term 1B, Class 11, Unit 1, Assignment 14 and possibly 15 if we get there. It is Thursday, November 3rd, and I am Jillian Percy. Let's see here. Okay, contact information page. Whenever you hand in your work, please send it to student.work@nnec.on.ca. And that way the secretary can log that you submitted work, and if there's another teacher later, they can access your work in a different term. Please always write on it your full name, your course name, the assignment number or name, depending on what it is, with the rough draft and the good draft label on it. If you took a photograph of an assignment, please send it as an attachment to the email rather than sending it directly in the email. It's very hard for us to print off and it doesn't want to show properly on the video. If you want to re-listen to this recording, it is on YouTube at gpercy space wasa. You need to talk to me about an assignment, message at jillian.percy@nnecschools.org. Okay, so today we are going to complete yesterday's work on adjectives. We are going to understand and apply the concept of subject-verb agreement. We're going to understand how song lyrics are different from prose. We will discuss the song, sit down and write in depth, identify the main idea with supporting details, practice summarizing the main idea and supporting details, and then practice editing a paragraph if we have time. Okay, breaking the order of adjectives on purpose. I think we talked about this a little bit yesterday. There are times when people will deliberately break the order of adjectives because they want to stress a particular adjective or quality about the noun. And the order can change depending on the meaning of the word, because some words have multiple meanings. For example, the word wooden can mean a type of material. The word wooden could also mean a type of facial expression, which is more considered a quality or like an opinion. So, for example, the old wooden mask hung on the wall. At that point, age comes before material, wooden. The wooden old face barely moved as he cried soundlessly. In this case, the quality of the face comes before age. So you don't want to think of the order as 100% absolute. It is typical. Do we use commas with adjectives or not? Two adjectives or more that come from the same category should have a comma between. So the disgusting, comma, smelly pear should get thrown away. But adjectives from different adjective categories do not need a comma between them. So the delicious yellow Welsh cheese had just arrived at the shop. You never put a comma before the noun it describes. Now, having said that, if I wasn't sure, I would probably err on the side of caution and just use the comma between adjectives. It looks better to me, and I think probably not everybody knows the rule about needing a comma if it's different categories. But that is just my opinion. I am making sure you know the rules. You can make your best judgments on that one. Adjectives can show up in two main places in a sentence. The first place is right in front of the noun it is describing. Now, the noun can be the subject or it could be part of the predicate. So the old red wagon is parked beside the little wooden shed out back. And old and red are describing wagon, little and wooden are describing shed. The second main place you'll find adjectives is after a state of being verb, which is sometimes called a linking verb because it's linking the subject to more information about it. The doctor, there's our noun, was helpful and kind. Helpful and kind are our adjectives, and they show up right after the linking verb help. Was. The hospital is enormous and well planned. Hospitals are noun, is the verb, and enormous and well planned are our adjectives. Now, sometimes in this format, you may have an adverb as well in there that is helping to describe or modify the adjectives. So you might end up with a phrase like the woods were very dark. So dark is describing woods, but very is describing dark. It's kind of funny, but there it is. It's only important in terms of if we're talking about adjectives at some point, I want you to know what I'm discussing. Now, adjectives are an extremely useful tool to help give extra information about a noun or a pronoun that helps you to picture it more clearly or understand it more thoroughly. Like most things, they need to be used in moderation. Generally speaking, 2 to 3 adjectives per noun will be the maximum. You could write a sentence that had 8 adjectives, one from each category, if you wanted, but it would really create a humorous effect that might not be what you hoped for. Look at these common nouns and think of some adjectives we could use to create a more vivid picture for the readers. I'm sorry, this is my second time through this today, so we have what I used previously. We have the friendly German Shepherd dog, the tiny broken down house, the ancient willow tree, a young brown bear, the evil old nurse, my sweet younger sister, my wonderful part-time job, the shimmering warm water, the long all-terrain woman's race. So all of those help to give a stronger picture of what's going on in that. You don't need to use a bunch of adjectives every time you have a noun in your sentence, but if it's a vague word like dog or house, it's a great idea to just add a little tiny bit of something there to give people something more specific to hang on to. Because you may be picturing a house and thinking about the house next door that's a one-story bungalow and has 2 bedrooms. And someone else might be thinking of the house that they live close by that has 3 stories and 6 bedrooms and 4 baths and a pool in the backyard. So you want to add some details because otherwise people may be picturing very different things. Okay, new grammar topic. Yesterday we were talking about the concept of checking for usage errors when we are doing our editing. And today's new topic would be one example of something to check when you're editing your work. It's usually referred to as subject-verb agreement. Remember that a subject is a noun or a pronoun. It could be a noun phrase, a noun phrase or a noun clause. Anyways, but subjects can be singular or refer to only one of something. A chair, my mom. But subjects can also be plural and refer to more than one of something. Tables, friends. We often add an S to the end of a noun to show that it is plural. Hang on. Okay. Now, a lot of people don't realize, but verbs have a singular or plural form as well. However, we don't use the S to show the plural form in verbs. I don't know why. It would be much less confusing if we did the same thing for both, but we don't. In English, we generally only use S at the end of singular verbs in the third person. So just to explain that, pronouns are generally split up into 3 categories. First person singular is I. I'm talking about myself. Second person would be you. And third person is the rest. He, she, it. Generally, singular nouns will be treated the same way as third person pronouns. So when they're singular, regular verbs will have an S at the end with he, she, it, or any singular nouns. No, you don't need to worry about subject-verb agreement when the verb is in the past tense. At that point, regular verbs receive an ed ending, which shows that it's in the past tense, and that is a priority over the singularity plural issues. Okay, so here are single verb tenses versus plural verb tenses. We add the S to the singular verb if it is going with he, she, it, or a singular noun. So I run, you run, he runs, she runs, it runs, Jack runs. But we do not add any S to any of the plural verb tenses. And you can see the verb tense stays the same. We run, you run, they run, Jack and Jill run, all the girls run. So in the plural, the verb doesn't change at all. It's only in the singular that it changes. So there's a phrase called subject-verb agreement, and we must make sure to use the correct form of the verb to match subject. So singular subject needs a singular verb, and a plural subject needs a plural verb. So I walk, you walk, he walks, she walks, it walks, bear walks. And then when you get to plural, we walk, you walk, they walk. So it really only comes up when you're looking at the third person. It, she, he, or a singular noun. There are a lot of singular nouns. Okay, subject verb agreement. Oh, I should have erased all this before. I'm going to quickly go through and change this. Hopefully you're not reading all these before you memorize them. Anyways, so we're going to listen to these. Sorry, trees falls in the wood. Is that correct or is that incorrect? We usually look at the noun or the pronoun and change the verb to match that. So trees is what we're looking at. Does falls match it? Are they both the same, both singular or both plural? Well, trees is plural, but in falls, we can't have an S, right? That would be incorrect. So I'm just going to highlight this here and you'll see that it is incorrect. A dog runs off to play. So dog is singular. Is the word runs singular? Yes, in this case it is. So this one is done correctly. Right? Let's look at the next one. He stays up all night. So he is singular. Is stays singular? Yes, it is. So this is done correctly. And I know the S, no S thing is kind of confusing. That's why we're practicing. Susan play on the beach. Okay, so Susan is singular. Is play singular? Nope. For this, it should say Susan plays on the beach. So at the moment, as it stands, it is incorrect. Okay. Peter and John rides horses. Now, Peter is singular and John is singular, but when you put them together, it's a plural subject. So they can't ride horses, they have to ride horses. So this one is incorrect due to that issue. Martha cooks supper. So Martha is singular. Is the word cooks singular? Yes, it is. So this one is correct. Just mark that here. She cut up the tomatoes. She is singular. Is cut singular? No, it should have an S at the end. So this one is done incorrect. All right. Last one we've got. They explains the long division. Is that correct or incorrect? Well, they is plural. Automatically, that's a warning sign. If it's plural, we don't use an S on the verb. It should say they explain the long division. So this one is not correct. Great. So we are working on song lyric today. One format we haven't looked at, this is song lyrics. They are a very different type of writing from what we've studied so far. They are very similar to poetry. Sometimes this difference can seem intimidating or make it hard for us to understand what it means. In popular songs, the lyrics generally have two main parts, the verses and the chorus. The chorus is the part that gets repeated after every verse. It's often very short and catchy. The verses are generally longer and convey the main meaning or message of the song, and usually those words are different each time. So here's an example. This is not our assignment. This is just kind of a pretend one to kind of get the idea across. This is the lyrics for Beautiful by Christine Aguilera. I'm going to kind of expand it. It's very tiny for my old eyes here. Ooh, very, very big. Okay, so let's look at this first of all. Let's just look at the very first part. We have don't look at me. Yeah, ooh. Now, that just sounds like nonsense because all they've done is basically they've tried to transcribe the sounds she's making. And really at the beginning, she's not so much singing words as she's just kind of sort of humming in a sense. So if you're looking at song lyrics or poetry, a line, just this first line, that's considered a basic building block. Whereas in prose, which is the kind of stuff you'd read in books or newspapers, a sentence is the basic building block. Songs are generally written in chunks, might be a chorus chunk or a verse chunk, and that is different in that prose would be written in paragraphs, right? Punctuation is pretty optional in lyrical formats. You can see they don't have a whole lot of periods. There's some commas. It's very, they don't really are, they're not sticklers for how that goes because in part they're going to sing it how they want to. So you don't need to worry that much about punctuation in lyrics. Let me think. Oh, and you can see also lines generally start with a capital, even if it is not the beginning of the sentence. Just a peculiarity of the format. So all of those differences, though, can make lyrics more tricky to understand. So let's look at this. I read the first verse already. Now I'm just going to grab a little the water here. Okay, and so then we've got every day is so wonderful and suddenly it's hard to breathe. Now and then I get insecure from all the pain. Feel so ashamed. I am beautiful no matter what they say. Words can't bring me down. I am beautiful in every single way. Yes, words can't bring me down. Oh no. So don't you bring me down today. Now that part's her chorus. She says that part over and over again. To all your friends, you're delirious, so consumed in all your doom, trying hard to fill the emptiness. The piece is gone, left the puzzle undone. Ain't that the way it is? Now she changed to one little line. You are beautiful, no matter what they say. Words can't bring you down. No, no. Because you are beautiful in every single way. Yes, words can't bring you down. Oh, no. So don't you bring me down today. And then we got our new verse. No matter what we do, no matter what we do, no matter what we say, no matter what we say, we're the song that's out of tune. Yeah, full of beautiful mistakes. Oh, yeah. And everywhere we go, the sun will always shine. The sun will always, always shine. And tomorrow we might wake on the other side. Because we are beautiful no matter what they say. Yes, words won't bring us down. No, you are beautiful. We are beautiful in every single way. Yes, words can't bring us down. Oh no. So don't you bring me down today. Yeah, don't you bring me down today. Yeah, yeah, ooh, don't you bring me down, ooh, today. Okay, so one thing that comes up as you're seeing this is, and I forgot to mention that, in songs, there is a lot of rhyme. Not necessarily every line rhymes with each other. It might skip a line, but it does come up. And sometimes I find that that really affects what words a poet or a songwriter uses. And it can be a little bit harder sometimes to understand the meaning because sometimes they're worried about the rhyme a little bit more than the meaning. So that can make it tricky as well. Whereas in prose, you're not really worrying about rhyme at all. Okay, so let's look at the assignment now. And I will put us back to a normal. Um, there we go. Let's see, 90%. Will that work? Quite. Let me try 75 and see if that works. All right, lesson 4, sit down and write. This is worth 27 marks. Um, so far during this course, you've read a variety of forms of writing, questions, assignments, instructions, a chapter in a novel, 2 news reports, and done different types of writing yourself. Brainstorm, list, point form, full sentence answers, journal entries, etc. It's easy to see that we read and write for different purposes and different audiences at different times. Your subject, what you're writing about, your audience, who you're writing it for, and your purpose for writing, to inform, to persuade, or to entertain, all influence your choice of form. That is, the type of writing, whether it's a report, a letter, an email. It also can affect your style and your tone, which is how you say what you say. A great example of how the above works is found in the following lyrics to a rap song that you can listen to on YouTube. You can search for sitdownandwrite.avi, or you can look up the following YouTube channel, SPEIDEL at 55. The lyrics to this song explain the writing process in a way that will speak to some but not to others. See what you think. All right, I've included the link so that you can go and listen to it yourself. Due to copyright issues, I'm not really allowed to play it. That can cause all sorts of problems with YouTube. So take a look here, and you can see already it's kind of different, isn't it? So the song is called Sit Down and Write. And this is verse 1. And it says, are you the type of writer who uses words as a lighter to ignite flames on fire as a means to inspire? Or are you the type of writer who writes for herself, for peace of mind, creativity, and mental health? Are you the type of person who's quite sure and certain that you can't stand writing, reciting, and rehearsing? Or are you that hidden talent in the back of the class who loves to tell stories, but no one cared to ask? Are you a future journalist, playwright, or poet? developing your skills, and you might not even know it. Are you an MC who's listened to the greats and writes rhymes with his iPod, records, and tapes? Are you an essay writer, or do you prefer fiction? Concrete, abstract, vivid descriptions. Let's use these words to document real life. So, anytime you're looking at a song and it doesn't have music, you're always going to be missing part of the meaning because in songs, the music kind of helps carry the emotion behind the words. So when you read lyrics without the music, they kind of sound a little bit flat. Okay. So just kind of explain why it might sound a little bit weird. But just the looking at the meaning of the lyrics, it's talking about how people write for different types of reasons. It asks if you write to inspire others or if you are writing for yourself. It asks if you're sure you hate writing or do you love it, but maybe your talent is hidden. And then it talks about how in the future you might be a journalist, a playwright, or a poet, and the work that you're doing writing now might be helping. Or maybe you write like an MC does, mixing words from other songs. Maybe you like to write essays or fictions. Maybe you like to write descriptions. Who knows? And then we've got kind of our chorus here. Collect your thoughts, grab a pen, sit down and write. Sit down and write, sit down and write, sit down and write. Collect your thoughts, grab a pen, sit down and write. Verse 2. First, you'll need some focus and a plan. Figure out your writing in the best way you can. Ask yourself questions that you think might be relevant. Access prior knowledge that will help you with development. Free write, brainstorm, and outline the elements. Refine your craft and write a first draft. Organize your thoughts, connect the future with the past. Now you're on your way to success real fast. Be open minded. We all need feedback. Some writers think they're too good and don't need that. Embrace other input. Be willing to revise. Try to understand your work through someone else's eyes. Reevaluate, reassess, reorganize. Edit and re edit. That's a word to the wise. Share your work with others. Try reading it out loud. Your finished product will be something that'll make you proud. So the chorus is encouraging you to sit down and write. And then it discusses the steps or the stages to the writing process. It discusses a lot of ways to do your planning or your brainstorming stage. Then it discusses how to write your rough draft. Then it suggests getting some feedback and being willing to revise your work. After that, it suggests editing your work. And then it suggests sharing your work in its final draft. So this verse really focuses on the writing stages. Does the whole song, though. Verse 3. Writing is a form of self expression, a way to liberate yourself from all oppression. It could be a teacher's plans for next day's lesson, or a novelist who loves to keep you guessing. Writing helps you use imagination, whether you're in school or on vacation. I make music in planes and train stations. These lyrics are a form of relaxation. Writing is an absolute necessity. If I couldn't write, people would think less of me. I know it's not fair, but that's reality. So practice using words because that's the recipe. So this first discusses what writing can do in a variety of areas. As a form of self-expression, to fight back against oppression, to create lesson plans or write a novel. Writing helps you use your imagination wherever you are. The writer finds that creating song lyrics is a way for him to relax. And also he feels like it helps people think better about him. At the end of the verse, he talks about writing as a way to practice using words because that's the recipe. It's a bit unclear what he means there, though. Maybe the recipe for success? Gee, I hope nobody's hearing all the noise in the background. I know it's not always easy. Writing is key communication. You'll need it for a job application after graduation. It's a form of conversation. All it takes is a little motivation. So this little part up here is actually part of the previous verse. He talks about how writing is a key way to communicate and that you need it for doing job applications. He also suggests that writing is a form of conversation. I wrote the wrong word here. Conversation, like it's a way to talk back and forth with your reader. Then there's the chorus, and then we have verse 4. Now that you've learned all about the stages, pick up your pen and write words on pages. like ancient language engraved and chiseled in stone, feathers dipped in ink, burnt coal, papyrus scrolls. Tell stories untold, let lyrics unfold. Sometimes you just gotta let it go. Try the many different styles of writing you know. Step out of your comfort zone, that's how you grow. You could be a critic of music, theater, or sports, or a stenographer who documents the words in court. You could try writing long novels or stories that are short, create tales in braille, and type email. Any way you slice it, writing is essential. Grab a pad or a journal, a pen or a pencil. Your imagination has infinite potential. Um, so here he talks about how writing is a key way to did that already. He concludes that he's told you about the stages of writing. He lists the different ways that people have written over time. He suggests that you should try to write in different formats to kind of grow. And then he discusses other jobs that might use writing: a stenographer, a novelist, email writer, writing in braille. He feels that writing is essential and is a way to access our imagination, sorry. Okay, so if you look at assignment 14, it's worth 12 marks. The very first question is worth 3 marks, and the question is, who do you think is the intended audience for this piece of writing? And why do you think so? Well, we haven't really discussed audience yet. Audience just means who would listen to this. Now, it's always tempting to just say everyone would, but you know what? In real life, it's rarely true. First, think about age. Is this written to young children, high school students, adults, or seniors? Other aspects of the audience could include income, lifestyle, jobs, interests, hobbies, education level, gender, and any other way that people can be grouped. It also asks why you think the audience that you've described is the target audience. You should generally use evidence from the lyrics to help support your answer. So, in other words, when you said what you thought the audience was, what in the song made you think that? So, sometimes we call this kind of justifying an answer. Remember when we discussed RAP as a way to create an answer? RAP stood for restate, answer, prove. So for question number one, that might look like this. I think the intended audience is, and then you would tell me your ideas, because, and explain one reason, and then if possible, and give me another reason why you think your audience is what it is. Let me think. Okay, now we're on question two. Question two has two parts. Part A says, list three of careers, which are types of work, mentioned in the song where writing is an essential skill. And then B says, come up with three other careers you think would require good writing and or reading skills. And that's 3 marks altogether. So the song lists careers in a few places. Sometimes people have a hard time with the part. I find people seem to notice the one main spot or the second main spot, but they don't notice both at once. But there's plenty there to write about. Part B asks you to think about other careers that would need good writing or reading skills. Now, this should not be the same ones that you just mentioned. We're looking for different ones. Okay. Let's look at the next question. Okay, question 3. You've probably been taught the writing process, brainstorming for ideas, writing a rough copy, revising, editing, and producing a final copy in other English classes. Whether you've realized it or not, sit down and write teaches those same skills. But rather than using the form of an in-class discussion, a textbook, or an informative essay, the information is presented as a rap song. You are to write a brief summary of this song in at least 4 sentences. What is it about? Main idea and supporting details. So when we were looking at the song verse by verse, I did what we might call a retelling. I tried to list almost every detail that the song included and kind of explain it. But a summary is much different than a retelling. A summary tries to list the most important points about what you read. It's usually much shorter than a retell. In this case, they're only looking for 4 or 5 sentences. So first, think about the main idea of the song. What is its overall message? What are some of the big concepts or statements that support the main idea? Okay. I'm going to kind of segue over to this for a minute. We haven't really looked at how to find the main idea or the details. So I'm going to do it here and kind of use this to help ourselves out. Hang on. Sorry, sometimes that happens. I don't always know how to get rid of it right away. Let me, so I'm just going to try something really quickly here, guys. Nope, I want to do that for me. Okay. This is called the scientific method. In ancient times, people tried to explain the world around them based on what they saw. People in ancient times saw that the sun came up from one side of the earth, moved across the sky, and went down on the other side. Based on this observation, they believed the sun travels around the earth. Going directly from observation to conclusion is called non-scientific thinking. Here's an example of non-scientific thinking. Maybe you had a sick stomach and you ate a candy bar. An hour later, you observed that you felt much better. You might conclude that it was the candy bar that made you feel better. But there are other possible explanations for the observation. Maybe you'd taken some medicine an hour earlier and it took a while. Maybe enough time had passed and you would have felt better without eating the candy bar. Non-scientific thinking happens all the time. The scientific method is a way of thinking that helps you to avoid drawing incorrect conclusions. It helps you to avoid non-scientific thinking. It reminds you to treat your first conclusion as just one of several possible conclusions. It reminds you to gather evidence to help support your conclusion. 5 steps in the scientific method begin by questioning an observation and end with a conclusion that is based on evidence. Step 1 is the scientific method. Step 1 in the scientific method is to ask a question about your observation, such as, what makes a sick stomach feel better? Step 2 is to state a possible answer to the question, which is called a hypothesis, such as, a candy bar makes a sick stomach feel better. Step 3 is to test the hypothesis. This can be done in many different ways. You could wait until you have a sick stomach again, eat a candy bar, and see what happens. You could ask a lot of people if eating a candy bar had ever made a sick stomach feel better. Figuring out how to test your hypothesis is what makes science challenging. Step 4 is to think about the findings. Think about what happened when you tested the hypothesis. And then step 5 is to draw a conclusion and share it with the rest of the world. So the first thing to do is locate or describe the main idea of the passage. Now, because it's called scientific method, I think a lot of people will look at that and just go, the main idea is the scientific method. But you know how we've talked about subjects before, and then predicates. The scientific method is just a subject. Also, is the entire article about the scientific method? I wouldn't say so. The first part of the article is about non-scientific thinking and kind of why it isn't good. And then the last 2 paragraphs talk about scientific thinking and why it's better. So the main idea of this paragraph might be described as explaining the reasons and steps behind the scientific method. Or you could say the main idea is to compare the differences between non-scientific thinking and scientific thinking. What are the details that support this main idea? Well, non-scientific thinking can lead people to draw incorrect conclusions. The scientific method helps you to avoid treating your first conclusion as your only possible conclusion, and it helps you to gather evidence to justify your conclusion. There are 5 steps to the scientific method. Step 1 is to ask a question about your observations. Step 2 suggests a possible answer called a hypothesis. Step 3 has you test your hypothesis. Step 4 is to think about what you want from the tests, what you found out from the tests. Step 5 is to draw a conclusion based on the results and to share those results. You can see there's a whole lot of examples in the original that I just left off because they aren't that important, not for a summary anyways. There's page 25. There we are. Okay, so you would apply the same technique to discovering the main idea to the song called Sit Down and Write. Remember that you only need to include the big ideas, not everything. You can often skip the examples they use to illustrate the big ideas. Try to put things in your own words if you can, rather than using the exact words that they used. One way to do this is to shorten sentences and make them more concise. Another way to do this is to think of synonyms for keywords that help you rephrase what it is saying and yet still keep the same meaning. So, synonyms. Understanding and using synonyms in our writing can help it be more effective. Synonyms may be more specific or help the reader to picture something more vividly. For example, the word said can be easily overused. And it doesn't really bring any special picture in your mind when you hear that word. It's so ordinary and so common. But there are many wonderful synonyms that can be used in place of said. Here are just a few examples. Talking quietly could be whispered, muttered, or murmured. Talking loudly could be shouted, yelled, screamed, shrieked, or exclaimed. Answering someone could be responded, replied, answered, echoed, repeated, or confirmed. Talking humorously could be joked, quipped, clowned, teased. Other types could be called, quoted, chanted, taunted, quizzed, interrogated, or questioned. Now, here's the thing. Although any one of those could be a synonym for the word said, they don't all mean exactly the same thing. Like if I had the word whispered in a paragraph, I couldn't replace it with a word like screamed because although they're similar, they're different enough that in that sentence, it's not a good substitute. So you have to be mindful of that as you're doing this. You can use an online thesaurus or a print thesaurus to help you find synonyms. Collins Dictionary is one, Webster's Dictionary is another. We've just talked about this. There's shades of meaning to different words. So, for example, with said, here you can see they're kind of organized from the quietest to the loudest. Screamed, shrieked, and yelled are pretty similar. If I had to, I could separate them out. Like, I think yelled is not as loud as screamed, and shrieked to me is like all out horror movie kind of yell. So if I was forced to, this is how I would organize them. Some of that is a little bit personal, right? Sometimes people just have a different connotation for each word. Okay, so synonyms can also be created not just with one word, but by a phrase replacing a word. Sometimes it can be hard to think of an exact synonym. A phrase would work instead, and that's fine when you're paraphrasing. What are some phrases that might work to create a synonym for the words below? Shouted could equal talked loudly. Expensive could equal high priced. Cheap could equal low quality. Traditional could equal old fashioned. And successful could equal financially secure. So now here's the thing. Look at these and think for a second. Would cheap always mean low quality? No, not necessarily, right? Cheap could mean it was a super expensive thing that happened to be on a really good sale. So you'd have to be mindful of that when you chose low quality as a substitute to make sure it's still conveying your meaning. Same thing with like successful equaling financially secure. If I said somebody was successful in climbing a mountaintop, I don't mean that they got there and there was a whole bunch of money up. So it has different meanings depending on when people use it. That will affect your usage of synonyms. Okay, so here is a little page where they've given us some sentences. They've underlined some keywords and then asked us to rewrite the sentence using some different synonyms to make it make sense. So the first sentence says about 30,000 children may be helped by the proposed free lunch program. And I changed that to about 30,000 children may be aided by the suggested free lunch program. Now, those are very close paraphrases. We're going to talk a little bit later about why I might want to make some more changes, but it does sound different. All of the people in class studied hard. The effect was a big increase in test scores. I changed that to all of the students in class studied thoroughly. The result was a huge improvement in test scores. Number 3 says, if you use cheap paper and discount ink, the quality of your printed documents will suffer. The situation can be avoided by switching to high quality products. I rewrote that as if you use low quality paper and knockoff ink, the quality of your printed documents will be negatively affected. This problem can be avoided by changing to high quality printing supplies. Now, products and printing supplies aren't 100% equivalent, so I couldn't necessarily put that in there for every sentence. But for this sentence, they are specifically talking about printing, so printing supplies works. Okay, here they've got a paragraph. And so now we're going to look at rewriting this with synonyms and modifying the sentences a little bit as well. This is called paraphrasing again. Sometimes we call it putting it in your own words, okay? If I say something like, oh, you didn't put it in your own words, that's what I'm talking about. You didn't paraphrase enough, you just used the words right from what you took it from. So the original says, cell phone usage has exploded over the past decade and continues to rise. Today, there's over 1 billion phone users worldwide. Concern has arisen over whether cell phone usage can harm a person's health. Brain cancer rates in the United States have risen since cell phones were introduced, leaving some folks to wonder if cell phone usage is the reason for the increase. Okay, so I have changed that over and around. Sometimes I change the sentences around too. So it says, over the past 10 years, mobile phone usage has snowballed and it continues to increase. Today, there are more than 1 billion phone users around the globe. Questions have arisen over whether cell phone usage can negatively affect a person's health. In the United States, the cases of patients with malignant brain tumors has increased since cell phone usage began, leading to concerns that cell phones may be the cause of the sudden upsurge. So sometimes it can be hard to think of synonyms on our own. When I was looking at the word brain cancer rates, I was thinking, like, what else? How else can you phrase that? But when I looked it up, there was said malignant brain tumors. Okay, I didn't realize. So there's nothing wrong with using a thesaurus. It'd be a really helpful tool when you're trying to paraphrase those. Okay, looks like we might have time to get on to assignment 15 today. Assignment 15 is about editing a paragraph. Hopefully, this song has inspired you and shown you that writing is an important skill that you will need at home, at school, and at work. Right now, it is time to take a look at what that means and then complete the task below. You are to read the following paragraph, correct as many errors as you can. You are then to rewrite the paragraph, handwritten, or on a computer. Now, here is the thing. Some people, what they do is they'll just kind of put this into their Word document and rely on spell check to capture everything. And I have to be here to tell you, it mostly will not capture any of the grammar problems or punctuation problems. It's not always as helpful as people think it will be. It will capture the spelling issues, but it won't capture everything. Remember that we are checking for capitalization, usage, punctuation, and spelling. A lot of times people focus only on spelling, but you do need to be aware of the other errors as well. So capitalization, we've discussed the rules for capitalization many times. So here, I just want to mention the key point that if you are editing run-on sentences and you use a period to create a shorter sentence, remember the word after that is now the beginning of a new sentence and needs to have a capital letter at the beginning. So here's an example. The bear was hungry after spring, and it began to go into community to look for food. And we changed that to the bear was hungry after spring, period. Capital I, it began to go into community to look for food. Okay, so that's really, really important. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit tired here. I'm having trouble seeing the cursor. There we go. Okay. Two other big errors that are pretty common with capitalization. The word I must always be capitalized, even when it is part of a contraction, like I'd, I'll, I've, or I'm, it still has to have a capital letter for the I. Occasionally, in the middle of a sentence, Someone will use a capital letter after a comma or a semicolon, but it really doesn't need to be there. Okay. It only is showing the beginning of a sentence, not the beginning of a phrase. So if I have, I went to go to the park and capital A, then we got ice cream, that's actually wrong. It should look like I went to go to the park, little a, and then we got ice cream. Okay, usage. Some things to look at are incomplete sentences or sentence fragments. You could also look at run-on sentences. We talked about that yesterday. Earlier, we talked about subject-verb agreement. Remember that singular nouns must have a singular verb and plural nouns must have a plural verb. Now, as well, I think it's been a while since we talked about this, but a singular noun must have an article such as a, an, or the. Sometimes a determiner might be used instead, such as this, that, or one. Plural nouns do not use a or an. They can use the. Plural nouns might also have determiners such as these or those, but they can get introduced without any articles or determiners at all. With single nouns, it sounds quite odd and it really isn't considered good grammar. Punctuation. We went over punctuation in detail yesterday, so you can always review that if you need to. Please keep in mind that commas do not separate a sentence from another sentence. That is the job of a period or other end punctuation. Now, commas can be used to separate items in a list, such as please buy me milk, bread, butter, and potatoes. And it can also be used to separate short phrases, such as in the summer they love to go camping, to pick blueberries, and to go fishing. Spelling. You are welcome to use the spell check. Keep in mind two things. It will not correct homophones that are incorrectly spelled, and it will not correct the wrong word that is correctly spelled. So if you wrote the word light, Liate, and you meant to write the overhead lights, Light, it's not going to notice because it's a legitimate word. It's spelled correctly. It's just not the right word for what you want. Same thing if you picked the wrong word. And I find this sometimes happens with people who are relying a lot on predictive text. Sometimes the phone will make a suggestion about a possible next word, and it doesn't actually make sense. Sometimes it's because we think it's one word, but it was really something quite different. Again, the computer will not notice that as long as it's functional in the sentence. The other thing it will sometimes do, sometimes it will try and correct things that are actually already correct. Like it will try and correct unusual place names or unusual people names or the Canadian spelling of some words or foreign words from another language, and it'll just say it's wrong. It's not necessarily wrong. If you're pretty sure it's correct, I would go back and check and see. Great, we have come to the end of class 11. And I will not be doing class tomorrow. Tomorrow's Friday. But on Monday, we will work on class 12 and I believe assignment 16. Thank you so much for listening today. And if you have any troubles with assignments, please give me a phone call. I'd love to help you. All right. Where is my cursor gone to? There we go.